Rishi Sunak will be in Kent to deliver an update on his plan to stop the boats.
Yes, the Prime Minister will detail the progress the government's been making over the last 6 months and his ongoing plans to tackle the asylum backlog.
Now, there's been a new poll suggesting a majority of you believe Sunak is doing a bad job in delivering on the 5 priorities he laid out.
Well, let's get into all of this now with the Deputy Political Editor of HuffPost UK, Sophia Sleigh. Good morning to you, Sophia. So a big speech from the Prime Minister this morning and a visit to Kent. What else is there to say on this?
Good question. So, yeah, another big speech. I mean, you probably remember, I think he gave one only a few months ago on a podium that said "Stop the boats" in Downing Street. So this is him coming back to the public, and my suspicion is he's going to sort of remind everyone, this is what we've done, this is what we've announced, this is what we're trying to do. I think, you know, as a journalist, I'm going to be looking out for any news lines. I think it might be a little bit news light. He might sort of point towards more detention centres and things like this. He might also sort of, there was a suggestion, I think, on the splash of the Telegraph that he'll point to the figures of Albanians coming across in small boats declining and things like that. The cynic in me looks at this speech and thinks this is a preemptive strike. We've seen beautiful weather this weekend. It's been absolutely gorgeous. But for, you know, us journalists and people working in politics and, you know, the poor people in the RNLI, this is now high season for people smugglers.
Well, one of his solutions will be to cram more people into hotel bedrooms.
Well, this is a big question. So, I mean, we've seen this has really hit the headlines over the last week. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are perhaps nuggets about building detention centres. But these are hugely controversial, even with Rishi Sunak's own MPs.
Yes. So we're talking about not more hotel rooms, more people per room. So what would you be like, and should we be worrying whether these migrant people are sharing with people they don't know, 2 in a room, 3 in a room, 4 in a room? Should that be a legitimate concern for everybody else? I mean, you wouldn't share a room with someone, would you?
Depends. I mean, I guess...
Well, it depends. I suppose you're right.
It does depend on who's in the room with me. I mean, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think the government needs to be showing that they are taking action on this. I'm not sure... I mean, there's obviously compassion for these people, but he needs to show that, you know, we are going to do something about this and move forward with it. In terms of people being worried about hotels, I mean, I'm not sure there's been a huge backlash about the conditions. I've not seen sort of public outrage as much as I've seen public anger towards boats crossing, if that makes sense.
So it's interesting, in the Times this morning, they're talking about they've seen some Home Office modelling, which is what it would look like if Rishi Sunak's plans were implemented. And they said that under his plans, the state can only cope with 10,000 illegal immigrants a year. We are so far off that. It doesn't look good. And we're so far off him stopping the boats. And we all know there's a general election looming next year. You know, and also this poll out today, this Ipsos poll, saying that actually people trust Sir Keir Starmer more to cope with this, to deal with the problem of immigration. Yeah,
I mean, it's quite a remarkable thing. I'm quite fascinated by the fact that the Tory government keeps pointing to what I would say is their Achilles heel. You know, the public expects, and, you know, sort of traditionally or stereotypically, the public expect the Tories to be hot on the economy and hot on immigration. They are not sort of Labour's safe spaces. And to see them, you know, like you referenced that poll, to see people thinking that Starmer could do a better job than Sunak is worrying for the Tories.
Now, we want to know what job Sunak has promised to do. Now, I've had a week off, as has Isabel, but forgive me, I've forgotten what the 5 promises are. So migrants, stop the boats is one of them. What are the other 4? Do you know?
Yeah, halve inflation. I've actually written them down so I don't forget. Halve inflation, grow the economy, debt falling, NHS waiting lists cut, and obviously small boats.
Tough ask there, isn't it?
I mean, I think they're quite open-ended. I mean, with stop the boats, I mean...
Yeah, he never gave a definition of what that meant.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of being seen to be doing. You say, look, these are ideas, and I think even if he makes sort of very small changes, like he'll sort of say today, you know, look, we've seen a decrease in Albanians trying to make the crossing, things like that. Small victories they're going to be pumping up, and that's the thing, is this is their Achilles heel, but they are going to be saying, well, look, we are taking action.
If I was Prime Minister, what I'd do is I would phone up all these countries around the world that are receiving receiving our foreign aid budget, and I would say, can't send you any more money, guys. Why not? Why not, Mr. Holmes? Because we're paying for migrants in hotels all over England. So we're using our foreign aid budget to accommodate all the people who you're not stopping travelling through Europe or leaving Africa or the Middle East or whatever it is. So I'm sure you'll understand. That's what I'd do.
Well, there's something to be said in that. I mean, the illegal migration bill, that is coming back to the House of Lords this week, relies on agreements with other countries to send migrants to. Yeah. So actually, we do need to be getting on the phone and talking to other countries. In terms of foreign aid and things like that, I mean, there's a different argument to be had about sort of soft power and what that gives us in terms of relationships with other governments. So I'd probably say that's a whole other debate. But I certainly think you make a good point about, we do need to be making agreements with other countries.
I thought it was interesting. Robert Jenrick over the weekend was speaking, saying that he'd just recently been to North Africa, and he'd also been speaking to his counterparts from many of the major European nations, and all of them very interested in what we're doing here. And, it is a problem that all countries are facing now. And I suppose if they can make it work, then a lot of countries will probably follow suit and try and adopt similar programmes.
Yeah, I mean, the problem for us is it's not working at the moment. I mean, this is Sunak's problem. Big ideas, big bombastic announcements that sort of started under Boris Johnson that are not coming to fruition. Yes, the Albanian plan seems to be working a little bit. Yesterday, Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, couldn't really give too much detail on it, but did suggest it was working. The illegal immigration bill is stuck in the House of Lords at the moment. That's probably going to be bogged down for a few more months. And Rwanda, that was announced well over a year ago. Not a single flight has taken off yet.
We should talk just briefly before we let you go, Sophia, about coronavirus, the COVID inquiry, ongoing. Lots of stories rumbling around that this morning. Austerity, according to the unions, is why we were so woefully underprepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm sort of surprised that this is the union's stance. They were never, ever in favour of austerity. It was never popular with them. And I think, to a certain extent, it is something that should be looked at. We are seeing the repercussions now. You look at all these strikes that are, these waves of strikes up and down the country. These are, public sector workers that were affected by austerity, then the pandemic, and are really feeling the pinch now. There's a suggestion that I think David Cameron and George Osborne might sort of be summoned to the inquiry and things like that. But, I mean, that seems to be quite a bloating inquiry. I think it will go on and on and on if this is how far back we're going. But they obviously feel it's necessary. And, on the flip side, the government of the day felt austerity was necessary to fight the deficit.
Indeed.
Thanks very much, Sophia. Look, we'll talk to you again later in the programme. We're getting reaction into what you've said.